The stars looked wrong today. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the main screen show thousands of red dots moving toward Earth. Each dot was an enemy ship. There were so many that the computer had stopped, counting after 50,000. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," Captain Lisa Brooks said from her station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "New Shanghai went dark 3 hours ago." Europa Station stopped responding an hour later. Jake nodded. They had all known this day would come. The Zaltharian Empire had been moving through human space for months, taking one colony after another. Earth was the last target, the last prize. "What about our fleet strength?" Jake asked. 800 ships total, sir. All that's left of the Terran Defense Force. 800 against 50,000. The odds were so bad they were almost funny. Jake had seen impossible battles before, but this was different. This was the end of everything, the communication. Panel beeped. A new signal was coming in from the enemy fleet. Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded and put it on the main screen. The alien face that appeared was tall and thin, with purple skin and 4 eyes. Emperor Vexton himself, Jake had studied the alien leader's file for years. The Emperor had conquered over 100 worlds. He had never lost a battle. "Humans of Earth," the Emperor said in perfect English. "I am Emperor Vexton of the Zaltharian Empire. Your colonies have fallen, your fleets are destroyed. You have 24 hours to surrender completely. If you do not, we will destroy every human in the galaxy." The transmission ended. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Jake could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the quiet beeps of the computer systems. "Sir?" Lisa asked. "Your orders?" Jake looked at the tactical display. Again. 50,000 enemy ships in a perfect formation. They were bigger than human ships, faster, better armed. The Zaltharians had technology that humans could barely understand, but Jake was smiling. "Open a channel to all ships," he said. Lisa looked confused but did as ordered. "Channel open, sir." Jake pressed the communication button. "This is Admiral Morrison to all ships of the Terran Defense Force. You all know why we're here. You all know what we're facing. The Zaltharians think they can come to our home and make us bow down. They think we'll beg for mercy like the other species they've conquered." Jake paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were all young people. Most of them had never seen a real battle before today. But they were ready. They had been training for this moment their whole lives. "But they don't understand humans," Jake continued. "They don't know that we've been preparing for this day since the moment we first met them. They think this is the end of humanity." "They're wrong. This is the beginning of something new." Jake looked at the tactical display again. The enemy ships were moving closer. They would be in weapon range in 6 hours. "All ships begin Formation Alpha. You know what to do. Remember, we're not here to win a normal battle. We're here to show the galaxy what humans are really made of." The fleet began to move. 800. Ships spreading out in what looked like a desperate attack formation. From the outside, it would look like humans were throwing their lives away in a final, hopeless charge. Jake turned to Lisa. "Signal Earth. Tell President Walsh that we're ready." On Earth, President Karen Walsh was standing in the command center deep under the Rocky Mountains. She was watching the same displays that Jake was seeing. The enemy fleet was massive, terrifying, but she wasn't afraid. "Madam President," her aide said, "the Admiral is ready." Karen nodded. "Open a channel to the planet." The aide pressed some buttons. "Channel open, ma'am." Karen looked into the camera. All over Earth, people were watching. In homes and schools and offices, humans were waiting to hear what their leader would say. "My fellow humans," Karen began. "Today an alien empire has come to our home. They have destroyed our colonies. They have killed our people. They demand that we surrender or face total destruction." Karen paused. She could imagine families huddled around their screens, children afraid of what was coming. "I want you to know that our fleet is moving to meet them. Admiral Morrison and 800 ships are all that stand between Earth and the enemy. The odds are terrible. Most of our ships will not come home." Karen's voice grew stronger. But I also want you to know that we chose this. We could have surrendered. We could have begged for mercy. Instead, we chose to fight. We chose to stand up. We chose to show the galaxy that humans do not bow down to anyone. The transmission ended. Karen looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was moving into position. Everything was going according to plan. Back on the UES Defiance, Jake was watching his ship spread out through space. To the Zeltharians, it would look like a suicidal charge. They would think that humans had finally broken, that they were making a desperate last attack. They were wrong. "Sir," Lisa said, "we're getting a message from Dr. Susan Miller on Earth." Jake nodded. "Put her through." Dr. Miller's face appeared on a small screen. She was in her laboratory, surrounded by computers and strange equipment. She had been working on a special project for years. "Admiral," Dr. Miller said, "all systems are ready. We've been preparing for this moment for 15 years. The Zeltharians think they know our technology. They think they understand human weapons. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Jake smiled. "How long until Phase 1? 4 hours, sir. Make sure your ships are in position." "They will be, Doctor, they will be." Jake turned back to the main screen. The enemy fleet was getting closer. He could see the massive shapes of their battleships. Ships that could destroy planets. Ships that had conquered half the galaxy, but Jake wasn't worried. The Zeltharians had made one big mistake. They thought they were fighting a normal war against a normal enemy. They thought humans would fight like every other species they had conquered. They were about to learn that humans were different, sir. Lisa said, "Enemy fleet will be in range in 2 hours." "Good," Jake replied. "Signal all ships. Tell them to get ready." "Phase 1 begins soon?" Jake looked at the stars one more time. In a few hours, the biggest battle in human history would begin. Most of his ships would be destroyed. Most of his people would die, but Jake was still smiling, because the Zeltharians had no idea what was really coming for them. Image description for Leonardo AI. A massive space battle scene showing hundreds of human spaceships in formation approaching an enormous alien fleet. The human ships are smaller and darker, arranged in a seemingly desperate charge formation against thousands of larger, more advanced alien vessels with purple and silver hulls. Earth is visible in the background as a blue marble. The scene is set in deep space with stars scattered across a dark void. The alien fleet appears overwhelming and organized in perfect military formation, while the human ships look outmatched, but determined. The lighting should emphasize the dramatic scale difference between the two fleets, with the alien ships gleaming menacingly and the human ships appearing smaller but resolute. The first human ship to die was the UES Courage. Commander Alex Stone watched from the bridge of the UES Resolute as the smaller vessel exploded in a bright flash of light. The Zeltharian weapons were more powerful than anything humans had ever seen. "Sir, we're taking heavy fire," his weapons officer reported. "Shields are down to 60%, Alex nodded. Everything was going exactly as planned. The Zeltharians thought they were watching humans die in a desperate attack. They had no idea that every move was carefully planned. "Continue forward," Alex ordered. "Stay on course." The U's Resolute shook as enemy fire hit the hull. Alex could see the damage reports coming in. His ship was being torn apart, but he kept moving forward. Behind him, more human ships were charging into the enemy formation. On the bridge of the massive Zeltharian flagship, Emperor Vexthan watched the battle with confusion. The humans were flying straight into his guns. Their ships were exploding, one after another. It was exactly what he had expected, but something felt wrong. "General Zark," the Emperor said to his military advisor, "these humans are acting strangely." General Zark looked at the tactical display. "How so, my lord?" "Look at their attack pattern. They're not trying to hit our important ships. They're just flying into our formation and dying." "Why would they do that?" Zark shrugged. "Perhaps they have gone mad with fear?" Many species break when they face the Empire's power. But Vexen wasn't convinced. He had conquered many worlds. He knew how different species fought when they were desperate. This was different. The humans were dying, but they were dying in very specific places. Deep under the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Dr. Susan Miller was working at her computer. Around her, dozens of scientists and engineers were monitoring the battle. They had been preparing for this moment for 15 years. "How are our people doing up there?" asked Dr. Kevin Palmer, her assistant. Susan looked at the tactical display. Human ships were exploding all over the screen. Each explosion represented hundreds of dead humans. But those deaths were not meaningless. "They're doing exactly what they need to do," Susan replied. "Every ship that dies is getting us closer to victory." Kevin looked confused. "I don't understand. How can losing ships help us win?" Susan pointed to the screen. "Look at where our ships are dying. Look at the pattern." Kevin stared at the display. At first, it just looked like random destruction, but then he started to see it. The human ships weren't dying randomly. They were dying in specific locations throughout the enemy fleet. "My God," Kevin whispered. "They're positioning themselves." "Exactly," Susan said. "Every human ship that appears to be destroyed is actually placing itself exactly where we need it to be." Back in space, Captain Danny Foster was leading his squadron through the most dangerous part of the enemy formation. His ship, the UES Thunder, was surrounded by massive Zeltharian battleships. His smaller human vessels looked like insects flying between giants. "Captain," his pilot said, "we're being targeted by 6 enemy ships. We can't survive this." Danny looked at his navigation display. They were almost at the right position. "Hold course. We need to get exactly where we're supposed to be." The UES Thunder shook as enemy fire hit the engines. Danny could feel the ship losing power. But they were almost there. Almost in position. "Sir, we're going to die," his pilot said. Danny smiled. "That's the plan." The UES Thunder exploded in a ball of fire. But before it died, it sent out a special signal. A signal that would be very important later. The Zeltharians didn't notice the signal. They were too busy celebrating their easy victory. To them, it looked like the humans were just throwing their lives away. But Admiral Jake Morrison was watching from the UES Defiance. He could see the real battle happening. On his tactical display, human ships were appearing as red dots throughout the enemy formation. Each red dot was a human ship that had died but was actually still functional. "Sir," Captain Lisa Brooks said, "we've lost 300 ships so far." Jake nodded. "How many are in position?" Lisa checked her instruments. 250. "We're almost ready for Phase 2. Jake looked at the main screen. The Zeltharian fleet was spread out in a perfect formation. They thought they were winning easily. They had no idea that human ships were now scattered throughout their entire fleet. "Signal Dr. Miller," Jake said. "Tell her we're almost ready." On Earth, Susan Miller received the message. She turned to her team of scientists. "Prepare the virus. We go live in 1 hour." The virus was the key to everything. For 15 years, human scientists had been studying Zeltharian technology. Every time the aliens had visited Earth for trade or diplomacy, humans had been secretly learning about their systems. The Zeltharians thought their technology was too advanced for humans to understand. They were wrong. Humans were very good at learning from their enemies. "Dr. Miller," said Dr. Jane Roberts, the computer specialist, "the virus is ready. But we need our ships to be very close to the enemy systems for it to work." Susan looked at the tactical display. Human ships were scattered throughout the enemy fleet. Ships that the Zeltharians thought were destroyed. Ships that were actually waiting for the right moment. "Our people are in position," Susan said. "They've sacrificed everything to get this close. Now we make their sacrifice mean something." Back in space, the battle continued. More human ships were dying as they moved into position. The Zeltharians were starting to relax. This was easier than they had expected. Emperor Vexthan watched another group of human ships explode. "These humans are weaker than I thought. Their ships are no match for our weapons," but General Zark was still worried. "My lord, something still feels wrong. Look at how they're spreading out. It's almost like they're trying to surround us. Vexthan laughed. Surround us? With 800 ships against 50,000? Impossible. But Zark was right to be worried. The humans weren't trying to win a normal battle. They were setting up something much more dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Price was piloting the science vessel UES Discovery. Her ship was smaller than the others, designed for research instead of fighting. But today she had the most important job in the fleet. Commander, her science officer said, we're in position. The virus transmitter is ready. Rachel looked at her instruments. Around her, Zaltharian ships were moving in their perfect formation. They had no idea that a small human science ship was hiding among them. Not yet, Rachel said. We wait for the Admiral's signal. On the UES Defiance, Admiral. Jake Morrison was watching the final pieces fall into place. Human ships were scattered throughout the enemy fleet. The Zaltharians thought they had won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sir, Lisa Brooks reported, all ships are in position. Dr. Miller confirms the virus is ready. Jake looked at the tactical display one more time. 50,000 enemy ships in perfect formation. 250 human ships hidden among them. Everything was ready. Signal all ships, Jake said. Begin Phase 2. The real battle was about to begin. And the Zaltharians had no idea what was coming. Jake smiled as he pressed the communication button. This is Admiral Morrison. The dance is over. Time to show them what humans can really do. The Zaltharians were about to learn that sometimes the prey is actually the hunter. Image description for Leonardo AI. A dramatic space battle scene showing human ships appearing to be destroyed while secretly positioning themselves throughout a massive alien fleet. Small human vessels with battle damage and flickering lights are scattered between enormous purple and silver Zaltharian battleships. Some human ships are exploding in bright flashes, but others are drifting apparently dead while actually hiding among the enemy formation. The scene should show the deceptive nature of the battle, with human ships that look defeated but are actually in strategic positions. The Zaltharian ships are massive and gleaming, arranged in perfect military formation, while the human ships appear smaller and damaged but are cleverly positioned throughout the enemy fleet. The lighting should emphasize the contrast between apparent defeat and hidden preparation. Emperor Vexen was beginning to understand that something was very wrong. The human ships that had appeared to be destroyed were not as dead as they looked. His sensors were picking up strange signals coming from all over his fleet. General Zark, he said, his voice tight with worry. Run a full scan of our formation. I want to know exactly where every human ship is. Zark worked quickly at his console. When the results came back, his face went pale. My lord, we have a problem. There are human ships scattered throughout our entire fleet. Ships we thought were destroyed. Vexthan stared at the tactical display. Red dots were appearing everywhere. Human ships that had been hiding among his vessels. Ships that were now very much alive. How many? He asked. Over 200, my lord. They're positioned at critical points throughout our formation. Vexthan felt something he had never experienced before. Fear, in all his years of conquest, no species had ever tricked him like this. The humans hadn't been making a desperate attack. They had been setting a trap, Lieutenant Commander Rachel. Price smiled as she activated the virus transmitter on the UES Discovery. Her small science ship had been drifting among the enemy vessels for over an hour, pretending to be destroyed. Now it was time to reveal the truth. Transmitter active, her science officer reported. Virus is spreading to all nearby Zaltharian ships. Rachel watched her instruments as the virus spread through the enemy computer systems. The Zaltharians had made a big mistake. They thought human technology was primitive. They had no idea that humans had been studying their systems for 15 years. Signal received from Admiral Morrison, her communications officer said. All ships are to begin Phase 3. Rachel pressed the fleet communication button. This is Commander Price to all human vessels. Light them up. Across the Zaltharian fleet, human ships that had been playing dead suddenly came to life. Their weapons powered up. Their shields activated. Their engines roared back to full power. On the UES Defiance, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet begin to panic. Zeltharian ships were spinning out of control as the virus attacked their systems. Their perfect formation was falling apart. "Sir," Captain Lisa Brooks reported, "the virus is working perfectly." "Enemy ships are losing power all over the fleet," Jake nodded. "Signal Dr. Miller. Tell her Phase 3 is complete. We're ready for the final phase." On Earth, Dr. Susan Miller was watching the battle with satisfaction. Her virus was doing exactly what she had designed it to do. For 15 years, her team had studied every piece of Zeltharian technology they could find. Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to learn. "Dr. Miller," said Dr. Kevin Palmer, "the virus has infected over 30,000 enemy ships. Their weapon systems are failing." Susan smiled. "Perfect. Signal Admiral Morrison. Tell him to begin the real attack." Back in space, the tide of battle was changing rapidly. Zeltharian ships that had been so confident were now struggling just to stay in formation. Their advanced weapons were shutting down. Their powerful shields were failing. Captain Tony Martinez was commanding the UES Retribution, one of the ships that had been hiding in the enemy formation. His vessel had taken a lot of damage while pretending to be destroyed, but now it was time to fight back. "All weapons, target the nearest battleship," he ordered. The UES Retribution opened fire on a massive Zeltharian vessel. The enemy ship tried to return fire, but its weapons were not working properly. The virus had damaged its targeting systems. "Direct hit," Tony's weapons officer reported. "Enemy shields are down." Tony watched as the huge alien ship began to burn. For the first time in the battle, a Zeltharian vessel was being destroyed by human weapons. "Signal the fleet," Tony said. "The big ships are vulnerable. Attack now." Oh. Around the enemy formation, human ships began their real attack. Ships that had been hiding for hours suddenly revealed their true purpose. They weren't there to die. They were there to kill. Emperor Vexthan watched his fleet fall apart around him. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were being destroyed by vessels they had thought were primitive. His perfect formation was now a disaster zone. How is this possible? He demanded. General Zark was working frantically at his console. "The humans have infected our systems with some kind of virus. It's attacking our ship computers. Our weapons are failing." Vexthan felt his anger growing. "These humans dare to use such tricks? They have no honor." "My lord," Zark said, "honor will not save our ships. We need to retreat." But Vexthan was not ready to give up. He had never lost a battle. He would not start now. "Order all ships to switch to manual control," he commanded. "We can fight without computers," but it was too late. The virus was spreading faster than his ships could adapt. Human vessels were attacking from inside his formation. Ships he had thought were destroyed were now his greatest threat. "Admiral." Jake Morrison opened a communication channel to the entire enemy fleet. His voice was calm and confident. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. You came to our home expecting to find a weak species that would beg for mercy. Instead, you found humans. We don't beg, Emperor. We don't surrender, and we certainly don't make it easy for you." The Admiral's image appeared on screens throughout the Zeltharian fleet. He was smiling. "You thought you understood human technology. You thought you knew how we fight. You were wrong. We've been studying you for 15 years. Every meeting, every trade agreement, every time you visited our worlds, we were learning your weaknesses, learning how to beat you." Emperor Vexthan tried to respond, but his communication systems were failing. The virus was spreading through his flagship. "The virus attacking your systems was designed specifically for your technology," Morrison continued. "We built it using your own blueprints. Your advanced computers are now your greatest weakness." Captain Danny Foster's replacement, Captain Steve Parker, was leading a group of human ships against a Zeltharian battle group. His squadron had been hiding among the enemy vessels for 2 hours, waiting for this moment. "Target their command ship," Steve ordered. "Take out their leadership." The human ships opened fire on the Zeltharian command vessel. Without their computer systems working properly, the aliens couldn't coordinate their defense. The massive ship began to break apart under the human attack. "That's for Danny and all the others," Steve said quietly. All across the battle zone, the same scene was playing out. Human ships were attacking from positions the Zeltharians had never expected. The virus was spreading through the enemy fleet like wildfire. Ships that had seemed invincible were now helpless. Dr. Susan Miller was watching the battle from her command center on Earth. Her virus was working even better than she had hoped. The Zeltharians were learning what happened when they underestimated human intelligence. "Dr. Miller," Dr. Jane Roberts reported, "we're detecting massive system failures throughout the enemy fleet. The virus has infected over 40,000 ships." Susan nodded. "Good, but this is just the beginning. Signal Admiral Morrison. Tell him we're ready for Phase 4. On the UES Defiance, Admiral Morrison received the message. He looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was in complete chaos. Ships were spinning out of control. Explosions were lighting up the darkness of space. "Signal all ships," Morrison ordered. "Begin Phase 4, show them what human weapons can really do." The real battle was just beginning. The Zeltharians had thought they were fighting primitive humans with inferior technology. They were about to learn that humans had been hiding their true capabilities. Morrison pressed the communication button one more time. "This is Admiral Morrison to all human vessels. The Emperor wanted to see how humans fight. Let's show him." The Zeltharians were about to discover that humans didn't just fight with honor or glory. They fought with whatever it took to protect their families. And there was nothing more dangerous than humans fighting for their survival. Image description. For Leonardo AI, a chaotic space battle scene showing the moment when human ships reveal themselves and begin their real attack. Previously, dead human vessels are suddenly powering up with bright engine glows and weapon fire among a massive alien fleet. Zeltharian ships are spinning out of control with sparking damage and system failures, their perfect formation collapsing into chaos. Human ships are emerging from hiding spots throughout the enemy fleet, their weapons firing at close range into the larger alien vessels. The scene should show the dramatic reversal. Alien ships that looked invincible are now vulnerable and confused, while human ships that appeared defeated are now attacking with precision. Explosions and electrical malfunctions light up the Zeltharian ships, while human vessels glow with renewed power and purpose. The contrast should emphasize the moment of revelation when the trap is sprung. Emperor Vexthan's flagship was shaking apart around him. The massive ship that had conquered 100 worlds was now spinning helplessly through space. His bridge crew was trying desperately to regain control, but nothing was working. "My lord," General Zark shouted over the noise of failing systems, "we must evacuate the bridge. The ship is breaking apart." Vexthan refused to move. He stared at the tactical display, watching his mighty fleet tear itself apart. 50,000 ships reduced to chaos by 800 humans. It was impossible. It was humiliating. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking through the damaged communication system. "Because you never understood what you were fighting," said Colonel Maria Santos from the UES Vengeance. Her ship had been hiding inside the Emperor's formation for 3 hours. "You thought you were fighting another alien species. You thought we would follow your rules of war. You were wrong." Maria's ship appeared on the main screen. It was smaller than the Emperor's flagship, scarred with battle damage, but its weapons were working perfectly. The Zeltharian ship's defenses were completely down. "You wanted to see how humans fight?" Maria continued. "This is how we fight. Not with honor, not with glory, but with whatever it takes to protect our families." The UES Vengeance fired its main weapons directly at the Emperor's ship. The massive Zeltharian vessel shuddered as the human weapons tore through its hull. "Impossible," Vexthan said. "Your weapons are too weak. Your technology is centuries behind ours." Maria laughed. "That's what you think. But you never saw our real weapons. The ships you studied, The technology we showed you during our meetings, that was all fake. We've been lying to you for 15 years. All around the battlefield, the same revelation was happening. Human ships were revealing weapons that should not exist. Guns that could punch through Zeltharian armor. Shields that could stop alien energy beams. Technology that was supposed to be impossible for humans to build. Captain Ryan Cooper was leading an engineering team on the UES Defiant. His job was to keep the ship's secret weapons running. For years he had worked on technology that was hidden, even from most humans. "Sir," his assistant engineer said, "the quantum disruptors are working perfectly. The Zeltharian ships can't adapt to our frequency." Ryan nodded. "Good, keep them running. We need every advantage we can get." The quantum disruptors were just one of humanity's hidden weapons. While the Zeltharians thought humans were using primitive technology, human scientists had been reverse engineering alien systems and improving them. On Earth, Dr. Susan Miller was preparing for the final phase of the battle. Her virus had done its job, but she had one more surprise for the Zeltharians. "Dr. Palmer," she said to her assistant, "activate the quantum cascade devices. It's time to end this." Kevin Palmer looked nervous. "Are you sure, Dr. Miller? The cascade could destroy our own ships, too." Susan looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was taking heavy losses. Even with all their advantages, they were still outnumbered 50-1. They needed something that would end the battle quickly. "Our people knew the risks when they volunteered for this mission," Susan said. "Signal Admiral Morrison. Tell him Phase 5 is ready." Back in space, Admiral Jake Morrison received the message. Phase 5 was the most dangerous part of the plan. It would either win the war or destroy everything. "Sir," Captain Lisa Brooks said, "Dr. Miller reports that the cascade devices are ready." "But sir, if we use them—" "I know," Jake said quietly. "Some of our ships won't survive. But if we don't do this, none of us will survive." Jake opened the communication channel to the entire human fleet. "This is Admiral Morrison to all ships. Phase 5 is authorized. All vessels prepare for quantum cascade activation." The quantum cascade was humanity's ultimate weapon. It was built using Zeltharian technology, but improved by human engineering. It could destabilize the exotic matter cores that powered alien ships. But it was also dangerous to human vessels. Captain Steve Parker was leading the final assault on a group of Zeltharian battleships. His ship, the UES Guardian, was one of the vessels equipped with a cascade device. "Sir," his science officer reported, "cascade device is charged and ready. But sir, we're too close to the target. The explosion will destroy us too." Steve looked at his crew. They were all young people. Most of them had families back on Earth, but they all knew what they had signed up for. "That's the point," Steve said. "We're not here to go home. We're here to make sure our families have a home to live in." Steve activated the cascade device. His ship began to glow with a strange blue light. The Zeltharian ships around him tried to move away, but it was too late. The UES Guardian exploded in a brilliant flash of light. But this wasn't a normal explosion. The cascade effect spread outward, destabilizing every exotic matter core within 100 kilometers. Zeltharian ships began to tear themselves apart from the inside. All across the battlefield, the same scene was playing out. Human ships were sacrificing themselves to activate cascade devices. Each explosion destroyed dozens of enemy vessels. Emperor Vexthan watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. Ships that had taken years to build were being wiped out in seconds. "What kind of species are these humans?" he asked General. Zark was trying to coordinate an escape. "My lord, we must retreat. The humans are using weapons we don't understand." But Vexthan was beginning to understand something else. The humans weren't just using advanced technology. They were using something the Zeltharians had never encountered before. They were willing to die to protect their home. "Signal the fleet," Vexthan ordered. "All ships, retreat to hyperspace, abandon the attack." But many of his ships couldn't retreat. Their engines were damaged by the virus. Their navigation systems were failing. They were trapped in the middle of a human attack that showed no mercy. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy fleet begin to break apart. Ships that had seemed invincible were now fleeing in panic, but the battle wasn't over yet. "Sir," Lisa Brooks reported, "enemy fleet is attempting to retreat." "Should we pursue?" Jake looked at the tactical display. His fleet was down to less than 200 ships. Most of those were damaged, but they had accomplished something impossible. They had defeated the Zeltharian Empire's main fleet. "Let them go," Jake said, "but make sure they remember this day." Jake opened a communication channel to the fleeing Zeltharians. "This is Admiral Morrison. You came here to conquer Earth. You brought 50,000 ships to destroy 800. You had every advantage. Superior numbers, better technology, more experience." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. "But you made one mistake. You underestimated humans. We don't fight like other species. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we will pay any price to protect what we love." Jake's image appeared on every surviving Zeltharian ship. He was still smiling. "Go back to your Emperor. Tell him what happened here. Tell him that humans are not afraid of his empire. Tell him that if he ever comes to Earth again, he will face the same thing that happened today." The communication ended. The surviving Zeltharian ships jumped to hyperspace, fleeing the battle they thought they could never lose. On Earth, people were celebrating. In the streets, the impossible had happened. Humanity had defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy, but Admiral Morrison wasn't celebrating. He knew this was just the beginning. The Zeltharian Empire would not forget what happened here. They would be back, and next time they would be ready for human tricks, but that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, Earth was safe. Today, humanity had proven that they could not be conquered. Jake looked out at the stars and smiled. The galaxy had learned something important today. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something dangerous, something that would never bow down to anyone. Image description for Leonardo AI: a dramatic space battle scene showing human ships with glowing blue quantum cascade devices sacrificing themselves to destroy much larger alien vessels. Human ships are exploding in brilliant blue-white cascades of energy that spread outward and tear apart multiple Zeltharian battleships from within. The alien ships are breaking apart with internal explosions and structural collapse as their exotic matter cores destabilize. Some Zeltharian vessels are fleeing in panic, while others spin helplessly out of control. The scene should emphasize the sacrifice of human crews, smaller human ships, deliberately flying into groups of alien vessels and detonating cascade weapons that destroy everything in a wide radius. The lighting should show the contrast between the brilliant blue cascade explosions and the darker destruction of the alien fleet. Debris and energy discharge fill the space between the combatants. The quantum cascade weapons were working even better than Dr. Susan Miller had hoped. From her command center on Earth, she watched as Zeltharian ships across the battlefield began to tear themselves apart. The exotic matter that powered their vessels was becoming unstable, creating chain reactions that destroyed everything nearby. "Dr. Miller," reported Dr. Jane Roberts, "the cascade effect is spreading faster than we calculated. We've destroyed over 20,000 enemy ships in the last hour." Susan nodded, but her expression was grim. "And how many of our ships?" 150 human vessels have been lost activating the cascade devices, but each one took dozens of enemy ships with them. Susan closed her eyes for a moment. 150 ships meant 15,000 dead humans, people who had volunteered to die so that Earth could live. Heroes whose names would never be forgotten. Commander Betty Ross was piloting the UES Defiant through the chaos of the battle. Her ship was one of the few human vessels that had survived the cascade activations. Around her, space was filled with the wreckage of both human and alien ships. "Commander," her weapons officer said, "we're detecting a group of Zeltharian dreadnoughts trying to escape. They're heading for the edge of the solar system." Betty looked at her tactical display. 5 massive enemy ships were fleeing the battle. These were the biggest vessels in the Zeltharian fleet. If they escaped, they could report back to the Empire about human capabilities. Set course to intercept, Betty ordered. We can't let them get away. The UES Defiant was fast, but the enemy, dreadnoughts, were faster. Betty watched as the gap between her ship and the fleeing aliens slowly increased. We're not going to catch them, her pilot reported. Betty smiled. We don't need to catch them. We just need to get close enough. Her ship was carrying one of the last Cascade devices. She had been saving it for exactly this situation. Emperor Vexton was on one of the fleeing dreadnoughts. His flagship had been destroyed in the battle, and he had barely escaped with his life. Around him, the bridge crew was working frantically to coordinate the retreat. How many ships do we have left? He asked General Zark. Zark checked his reports. Less than 10,000, my lord. We've lost over 40,000 vessels. Vexton felt sick. In one day, humans had destroyed most of the Empire's main fleet. Ships that had taken decades to build were now floating debris? How is this possible? He whispered. They're just humans. They're supposed to be primitive. My lord, the ship's captain interrupted, we're being pursued by a human vessel. It's gaining on us. Vexton looked at the tactical display. A single small human ship was chasing 5 massive dreadnoughts. It should have been laughable. Instead, it terrified him. Destroy it, he ordered. The dreadnoughts opened fire on the UES Defiant. Betty's ship shook as enemy weapons hit its shields, but she kept moving forward, getting closer to the alien vessels. Commander, her engineer reported, shields are failing. We can't take much more of this. Betty looked at her crew. They all knew what was about to happen. They all knew they weren't going home. It's been an honor serving with all of you, she said quietly. Betty activated the Cascade device. Her ship began to glow with the familiar blue light that meant death for everything nearby. Emperor Vexton watched in horror as the human ship exploded in a brilliant cascade of energy. The effect spread outward, reaching his dreadnought and the others around it. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace, he screamed, but it was too late. The cascade effect hit the dreadnoughts, destabilizing their exotic matter cores. One by one, the massive ships began to break apart from the inside. Vexton felt his ship shudder as the cascade. Energy tore through its hull. Emergency lights flashed as systems failed all around him. My lord, General Zark shouted, we have to abandon ship. Vexton looked around his bridge one last time. This ship had been his home for 20 years. He had conquered entire star systems from this bridge. Now it was being destroyed by a single human vessel. Evacuate the ship, he ordered. As the escape pods launched from the dying dreadnought. Vexton realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans had been smiling throughout the entire battle. Even as they died, even as they sacrificed themselves, they had been smiling. What kind of species smiled as they died? Captain Steve Parker was leading the final assault on the remaining Zeltharian ships. His squadron had been reduced to just 12 vessels, but they were still fighting. The enemy fleet was scattered and broken, but some ships were still trying to regroup. All ships, target the command vessels, Steve ordered. Don't let them coordinate a counterattack. The human ships spread out across the battlefield, hunting down the surviving enemy vessels. The Zeltharians were no longer fighting as an organized fleet. They were just trying to survive. Captain, Steve's communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from one of the enemy ships. They're trying to surrender. Steve looked at the tactical display. A damaged Zeltharian cruiser was broadcasting surrender signals. Its weapons were powered down and its shields were failing. Ignore them, Steve said. Keep firing. His weapons officer looked shocked. Sir, they're trying to surrender. Steve's expression was hard. They came here to destroy our planet. They came here to kill our families. They don't get to surrender now. The human ships continued their attack. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. The Zeltharians had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had found humans. And humans didn't show mercy to those who threatened their home on Earth. President Karen Walsh was watching the battle from the command center. The tactical display showed the complete destruction of the Zeltharian fleet. 50,000 enemy ships reduced to less than 1,000 survivors. "Madam President," her military advisor said, "the battle is over. We've won." Karen nodded, but she didn't feel like celebrating. The victory had cost humanity dearly, over 300 ships and 30,000 lives. Some of the best people Earth had ever produced were now floating dead in space. "Signal Admiral Morrison," she said. "Tell him to let some of the enemy ships escape." Her advisor looked confused. "Ma'am, why would we do that?" Karen looked at the tactical display. The few surviving Zeltharian ships were fleeing in all directions, desperate to escape the system that had become their graveyard. "Because we need them to go back to their empire," she said. "We need them to tell everyone what happened here. We need the galaxy to know that humans cannot be conquered." Admiral Jake Morrison received the president's message. He understood her reasoning. This battle had never been about completely destroying the Zeltharian fleet. It had been about sending a message to the entire galaxy. "All ships," he broadcast to the human fleet, "cease fire. Let the survivors escape. Our job here is done." The remaining human ships watched as the last Zeltharian vessels jumped to hyperspace. Less than 1,000 ships out of the 50,000 that had arrived. The survivors would carry the story of this battle to every corner of the galaxy. Jake looked at the tactical display one last time. Space around Earth was filled with debris. Human and alien ships destroyed in the greatest battle in galactic history, but Earth was safe. Humanity had survived. "Sir," Captain Lisa Brooks said, "what are your orders?" Jake smiled. It was the same smile he had worn at the beginning of the battle. The smile that had confused the Zeltharians. The smile of a species that wasn't afraid to die for what they believed in. "Signal Earth," he said. "Tell them we're coming home." The battle was over. Humanity had won. But more importantly, the galaxy now knew that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something dangerous, something that would fight to the death to protect their freedom. The Zeltharian Empire had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the species that seems weakest is actually the most dangerous of all. Image description for Leonardo AI, a vast space graveyard showing the aftermath of the quantum. Cascade weapons with thousands of destroyed Zeltharian ships floating as twisted wreckage throughout the solar system. Massive alien dreadnoughts are breaking apart from internal explosions, their exotic matter cores creating continuing chain reactions of blue energy. A few small human ships patrol among the debris field while scattered. Zeltharian survivors flee toward the edge of the system in damaged vessels. The scene should emphasize the scale of destruction. What was once a mighty fleet of 50,000 ships is now mostly floating debris and metal fragments. Earth is visible in the background, safe and untouched. The lighting should show the contrast between the blue cascade energy still crackling through some wrecks and the cold darkness of space filled with the remnants of the once mighty alien armada. Some human ships appear small but victorious among the massive alien wreckage. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, looking out at the debris field that had once been the mighty Zeltharian fleet. Twisted metal and burning wreckage floated through space as far as he could see. 50,000 enemy ships had become a graveyard. "Sir," Captain Lisa Brooks reported, "we've captured several Zeltharian communication arrays. They're still broadcasting across the galaxy." Jake nodded. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The battle had been won, but the real victory would come from what happened next. "Open a channel to the entire galaxy," he ordered. "Use every frequency. Make sure everyone can hear this." Lisa worked at her console. "Channel open, sir." "Broadcasting on all known frequencies." Jake pressed the communication button. His message would reach every inhabited system in the galaxy, every species under Zeltharian rule, every world that had been conquered by the Empire. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force," he began. "Today, the Zeltharian Empire came to Earth. They brought 50,000 ships to destroy our world. They expected to find another weak species that would surrender without a fight. Jake paused, looking at the wreckage floating outside his ship. They were wrong. We are humans. We don't surrender. We don't bow down. And we don't make it easy for those who threaten our families. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were listening to the human admiral's words. On conquered worlds, enslaved species looked up at the stars with hope for the first time in generations. The Zeltharian Empire believed they were invincible, Jake continued. They thought their technology was too advanced for us to understand. They thought their numbers were too great for us to defeat. Today, they learned that humans are not just another species to be conquered. We are something new, something they have never faced before. On the planet Andrus Prime, a species called the Kelrani listened to the broadcast with growing excitement. They had been slaves to the Zeltharians for over a century. Their leaders gathered in secret, whispering about rebellion. If the humans can defeat the Empire, said Elder Voxka, then perhaps we can too. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had given up hope were suddenly remembering what freedom felt like. Emperor Vexton was floating in an escape pod, listening to the human broadcast. Around him, the few surviving members of his crew were silent. They had all seen their mighty fleet destroyed by a species they had thought was primitive. How many ships escaped? Vexton asked General Zark. Zark checked his portable scanner. Less than 800, my lord, out of 50,000. Vexton closed his eyes. The greatest fleet in Zeltharian history had been destroyed in a single day. But worse than the military defeat was what the humans were doing now. They were broadcasting their victory to the entire galaxy. My lord, one of the crew members said, the human admiral is still speaking? Vexton listened as Jake Morrison continued his message. We know that many species across the galaxy have suffered under Zeltharian rule. We know that you have been enslaved, conquered, and oppressed. Today's battle proves that the Empire can be defeated. They are not invincible. They can be beaten. On Earth, President Karen Walsh was watching the broadcast from the command center. She knew that Jake's words would change everything. The galaxy would never be the same after today. Madam President, her communications officer reported, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Hundreds of species are declaring independence from the Zeltharian Empire. Karen smiled. This had always been the real goal. Not just to defend Earth, but to inspire the galaxy to fight for freedom. The Andromedans have declared independence, the officer continued. The Centauri Coalition is mobilizing their fleets. The Vegan Republic has recalled their tribute ships. The rebellion is spreading faster than we calculated. Captain Steve Parker was leading a patrol through the debris field when his communications officer picked up an interesting signal. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zeltharian home fleet. They're demanding to speak with Admiral Morrison. Steve smiled. Put it through to the Admiral. This should be interesting. On the UES Defiance, Jake received the transmission. The face that appeared on his screen was not Emperor Vexton. It was an older Zeltharian with elaborate military decorations. I am Grand Admiral Vexmore of the Imperial Home Fleet, the alien said. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. Jake laughed. Surrender? Admiral, have you been watching the same battle I have? Your Emperor just lost 50,000 ships. What makes you think we're afraid of you? Vexmore's face showed confusion. No species had ever spoken to a Zeltharian admiral like this before. You cannot defeat the entire Empire, Vexmore said. We have millions of ships. Thousands of worlds. You are just one planet. That's where you're wrong, Jake replied. We're not just one planet anymore. Look at your tactical displays. Check your communication networks. The galaxy is rising up against you. Vexmore's expression changed as he received reports from across the Empire. Rebellions were breaking out everywhere. Species that had been loyal for centuries were suddenly declaring independence. This is your fault, Vexmore accused. You have destroyed the peace of the galaxy. Jake's smile faded. Peace? You call slavery peace? You call conquest peace? Admiral, we haven't destroyed. Peace. We've given the galaxy hope. The transmission ended. Jake knew that the Zaltharian Empire would not give up easily. They would send more fleets, they would try to rebuild their strength, but it wouldn't matter. The galaxy had seen that humans could fight. Other species would follow their example. Dr. Susan Miller was in her laboratory, analyzing the data from the battle. Her virus had worked perfectly. The quantum cascade weapons had exceeded all expectations. But she was already thinking about the future. Dr. Palmer, she said to her assistant, begin work on the new defensive systems. The Zaltharians will be back, and they'll be ready for our tricks next time. Kevin Palmer looked at the tactical reports. Do you think we can win another battle like this? Susan shook her head. We won't have to. By the time they're ready to attack again, they'll be fighting rebellions on 100 worlds. They won't have the ships to spare for another attack on Earth. Back in space, the surviving human ships were gathering around Earth. They had started the day with 800 vessels. Now they had less than 200. But they had accomplished something impossible. Admiral Morrison opened a final communication channel, this time just to the human fleet. This is Admiral Morrison to all human vessels. You have fought with courage that will be remembered for 1,000 years. You have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. But remember, this is just the beginning. The Zaltharians will return. Other enemies will rise. But today, you have proven that humanity will never bow down to anyone. The human ships began their journey back to Earth. They carried with them the bodies of heroes and the knowledge that they had changed the galaxy forever. On the planet Kepler-7, a young Andromedan named Zexali was listening to the human broadcast with her family. For the first time in her life, she dared to dream of freedom. Mother, she asked, do you think we could fight like the humans? Her mother looked at the stars. Yes, child. I think we can. Similar conversations were happening on 1,000 worlds. The Zaltharian Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. But today, humans had shown the galaxy that fear could be defeated. Emperor Vexthan's escape pod was picked up by a Zaltharian rescue ship. As he was brought aboard, he made his final report to the imperial capital. The humans are not like other species, he said. They do not fight for conquest. They fight for survival. And there is nothing more dangerous than a species fighting for its survival. Do not underestimate them again. The message was received at the Imperial Palace, but it was too late. The galaxy was already in rebellion. The age of Zaltharian dominance was ending. Admiral Morrison stood on Earth's surface for the first time in months. The blue sky looked beautiful after so long in space. Around him, crowds of people were celebrating. They were calling him a hero. But Jake knew the truth. The real heroes were floating dead in space, the pilots who had activated the cascade devices, the crews who had flown into certain death to position their ships, the scientists who had spent 15 years preparing for this day. Admiral, a reporter asked, "What's next for humanity?" Jake looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were fighting for their freedom. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning. We keep watching, he said. We keep preparing, and we make sure that no one ever threatens our home again. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something that would smile as they died as long as they took their enemies with them. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Image description for Leonardo AI, a triumphant scene showing the aftermath of humanity's victory with Earth prominently displayed as a blue marble in the foreground, surrounded by the remaining human fleet of about 200 scarred but victorious ships in defensive formation. In the background, the massive debris field of destroyed Zaltharian vessels stretches across space, with